In this video, we are making the Eva bag. So I am going to take you step by step through this lovely little handbag that I've designed. The pattern is available on the website www.missmaker.com. Just pop into the shop there and you will find it under patterns and projects. There's 3 different sizes that the pattern comes in. I have already made the smallest size and the mid size, and in today's tutorial I'm going to be making the largest size for you in a lovely selection of denim and leather. This bag is really versatile. You can use any mid to heavyweight fabric for it, and you can use leather and pleather. So without further ado, let's get on with making that bag. So all of these bag sizes are going to want a little bit of hardware. You're going to want to get yourself a zip that is slightly longer than the zip panel of the bag you're using. And you're also going to want to get hold of 2 D-rings, 1 bag slider, which is for the strap that goes over, and a pair of bag clips as well. So to create the zip panel, you're going to place the zip right sides down onto one of your outer fabrics, place the lining fabric right side down onto that, pin along both the raw edges and the edge of the zip, stitch it into place. Once you've done that, turn back the fabric so the zip's on display and the rest of the fabric is out of the way, and then repeat the process for the other side of the zip. So place the outer fabric right sides down onto the right side of the zip, and then place the lining fabric right side down onto the wrong side of the zip. Line up the raw edges, pin and stitch into place. Once your zip panel is completed, give it a good press so those edges are nicely turned away from the zip, and then top stitch along all the layers either side of the zip. Once your top stitching is done, we're going to attach the upper bag ends. So they need to go right sides down onto either end of the zip. If you're using a metal zip like I am, be very careful as you stitch past the metal teeth. Maybe use the hand wheel instead of the motor, and then turn them back and top stitch again so that they sit in place nicely. We're going to open the zip slightly. That helps us turn the bag through later. Then we're going to take the lower bag ends, turn the straight edge in by 1 centimetre and top stitch across, and then place them right sides down onto the upper bag ends. The top stitched sections want to be slightly out of line, so the lower is sitting slightly lower than the upper, so that all the folded fabric doesn't stack up and get too thick for the machine. Then you're going to stitch round those bag ends. There should be a little gap because the lower bag end is wider than the upper bag end. Then you want to trim down the edge of the zip panel so they match the sides of the bag end now that they're joined. So that'll keep us all nicely in line for when we're attaching it to the rest of the bag. Then we're going to take the bag gusset and we're going to attach both the piping and the bag straps. The bag straps will be folded in like this and top stitched across and then joined to the bag gusset where it's marked on the pattern. Once those are joined, we can then move on to joining our piping. We stitch the first part of the piping right next to the bag straps, and then we turn the piping so the raw edges line up with the raw edge of the gusset. This gives us a really neat start and finish, and it hides the raw ends of the piping. Stitch all the way along, and at the other end of the gusset do the same thing. So we're going to stitch as far as we can and then turn the piping away so that the raw ends will be hidden inside the bag and you get a nice, neat, curved finish to either end of the piping. Once you've stitched all the way across, you can see that the piping curves nicely into the edge of the bag, and when it's turned out, it'll give you a really nice, neat finish. With our completed bag gusset, we're now ready to add it to the curved sides of the bag. So use clips or pins to hold it in place, matching up all the raw edges round the curved side of the bag, running the gusset from the top of one side all the way round to the top of the other. Stitch this into place, and that'll give you one side of the bag completed with the piping on display, and then repeat this for the other side. Again, using clips or pins to hold it in place, match the raw edges all the way round from the top of one side of the bag round to the top of the other. Now stitch this into place and you've completed the main body of the bag with the straps and the piping on display there. At this point, it's a good idea to do some top stitching. So take all the seam allowances, press them towards the side of the bag and then top stitch through all those layers. The bag lining is created in exactly the same way, just without the piping and straps. You want the bag lining right sides out and then the bag itself wrong sides out. Match up the top edges all the way around the lining and the bag and stitch that into place with some tacking stitches just to hold it while we're working with the rest of the bag. Once we've stitched round, we can attach our zip panel. So this goes right sides down onto the top of the bag and use clips to hold it all the way along the top edge of the bag side on one side and then attach it all the way along the top edge of the bag side on the other. As you can see, for this larger bag, I've actually popped a little patch pocket onto the lining as well, which is useful. Once you've stitched all the way along those top edges, your raw edge can be neatened with some overlocking or some zigzags. Pinch either end of the bag gusset, adding a little pleat, and there are some markings on the pattern that show you where you're doing this, and then stitch about an inch or so down to hold those bag ends together. You can now turn the bag through. We opened the zip earlier, so it's much easier if you've got the zip open in advance to do this. Gently pull the bag all the way through, and then once you have the bag turned through nicely, you can pull the bag ends all the way through the gaps at the end of the bag. Once the ends are pulled through, you're going to turn them out and use closed scissors or a pencil or the end of a paintbrush just to turn them all the way through nicely. Along the zip panel, do the same as we did when we top stitched around the sides of the bag. We're going to push all the seam allowances down inside the bag and then top stitch through all those layers right next to the zip panel. So our bag is nearly finished and we're at the point when we're going to be thinking about the hardware to put on the bag. We have the bag ends turned through, and depending on what material you're using, you might want to run some extra top stitching from the base of the bag ends just past where all the layers of the bag ends meet the bag, up and around the top and back down again. So I'm going to pop some top stitching onto this one. You don't have to. If it works really nicely, just giving it a good press, that's an option as well. But because we've got the top stitching elsewhere on this bag, I'm going to pop it onto these as well before we talk about the hardware. So our bag is coming along really nicely. We have got the sides together, we've got the top stitching done, you've got all your lovely details in terms of your straps and your piping, and the bag ends are now ready to take our D-rings, fold over and be secured down either with some stitches, or I'm going to actually use some press studs to hold the ends of my bags together because I think they look quite nice and they'll tie in with the other metalware I've got. The sizes of our D-rings, the pattern is drafted to take a 3.2mm D-ring, and that's the internal measurement of the D-ring. So when you've completed your bag straps, the ends of the bag should be 3.2mm wide, where the D-rings are going to slide over so they can pop in there, and the fabric hasn't got to crumple or anything. It's just going to sit in there really nicely. So you can use whatever size you like. You've just got to check the ends of the bag have been resized accordingly. In the same vein, you've also got to check that the size of your strap is getting resized accordingly. So I am making a bag strap from the same denim that I'm making this bag out of. I thought it would tie in quite nicely. You can always use webbing for this, so you can just buy 3.2mm wide webbing and use that as your bag strap instead. But I think it's quite nice to make it out of the matching fabric. So what I've done is I have overlocked the two raw edges of my denim, and then I have folded them in and pinned them so they are the same size as the bag slider, the internal measurements of the bag slider. So they will pop onto here quite nicely. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to run top stitching down either side of this bag strap so that it ties in really nicely with the bag that we've just made. So my strap's all ready, it's all top stitched and ready to put the hardware onto it. The first thing I'm going to put on is the bag slider. And what I'm going to do with the right side facing out, I'm going to pop it through one side of the bag slider and then wiggle it through the other side. So it's on the bag slider nice and securely. I'm then going to fold that down and I'm going to pop a pin there because that is where we're going to stitch across to secure the bag slider to the bag strap. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my bag clips and I'm going to pop that on to the strap again, so the clip is facing towards the outside of the strap. So the clip's gone on there and you can see it on the right side of the strap there. And I just let it fall down the strap towards where the slider is. So it's going to come together like that. What I then do is I put the end of the bag strap through, make sure it's not twisted, through the slider on this side. So there's my clip and there's my bag strap going through my slider. And then I put it through the other side of the slider. So then it's together. So the bag clip is secured on one end and the slider is there so you can adjust the length of the strap up and down. On the other end, it's even more simple. You place this bag clip on the right side of the strap again, and you just turn it down, just like when you were just attaching the bag slider, and you pop another pin there, ready to stitch across to hold that onto the end of your bag strap. So we've got the clips on either end and we've got the slider in the middle holding it all together. And there's the right side of the bag strap. You can see everything there. So I'm going to stitch across these ends that I've pinned. I'll go backwards and forwards quite a few times. You need to make them quite strong because they're going to take a lot of wear when you're using your bag. And I'm also going to go across where I have pinned the slider in place and go backwards and forwards a few times there as well. You can either use compressed zigzags, so zigzags on quite a short stitch length to hold it nice and securely, and then the raw edges you can trim nice and short, or you can use straight stitches and go backwards and forwards If your bag strap isn't too thick, you can tuck the raw edges underneath then and just use straight stitches. But because this denim's quite thick, I'm going to use zigzag stitches and then just trim the raw edges afterwards. So I'll get that all sorted in just a second. The other thing that I need to do is attach my D-rings to the end of my bag. So I'm going to pop those on now and fold the ends over. And I'm going to use, as I mentioned, press studs to hold these in place. So I have got a couple of tools that I like to use. I have actually got a punch that will go through all sorts of fabrics and leather and all that kind of thing. And this makes the little hole for the press stud to go through. If you haven't got one of these, it's not the end of the world. You can use an awl. If you have an awl, you can push that through to create the hole. Or if you don't have an awl, you can use a metal kitchen skewer and something like a wine cork or a champagne cork on the other side and push it through the fabric to make the hole for your press stud. What you then do is to put the press stud onto the bag, you can either use a set of these pliers if you're using press studs. These are prim pliers, but they do actually fit most of the press stud fittings, even if you haven't got prim press studs. So I tend to use these to put them on. Press studs also will normally come in a little kit, and they will give you a little plastic tool, and you can get a good old-fashioned hammer and use that to put them in place as well. So it just depends how you want to attach them, but I'm going to do them with my pliers and my hole punch, and I'll put them on now so we've got the finished bag ready. So I'm going to make a hole in the end of my bag strap for my press stud. I use this little tool to make a hole in the end and just pick a little bit away there. So I've got a hole going through the two layers of fabric. I am then going to push my top of my press stud through that little hole, and then I'm going to put my bottom of my press stud through there. Now I need to have the right fixings on my pliers. So I've got the little fixing that is like a little dish for the back of the press stud to sit in. And then I've got this one that pokes down into the snap part of the press stud to be able to hold it all together. So I pop this one through, this one on here, position it up in the tool, and then give it a really good squeeze. And that's my press stud attached to this bit here. What I then want to do is put my D-ring over the end of my bag strap and have a little look at where I want to position the stud that it's going to actually fasten to. So I want it to be nicely in the middle. Let's have a little look. Fold it over. And I'm going to want to put my little press snap into there. So I'm going to make another hole to take the little press snap. Again, I'll use my punch tool to make that hole. And then I put the end of the little press stud through there, and then the cap onto there as well. I need to change the ends of my pliers. Just grabbed a screwdriver to do that. So I've got a little screwdriver that I can use to push that one out and to push this one out. They are always a really, really tight fit these. And then I'm going to pop the other pieces in. So we've got a little piece on this side of the pliers that goes onto the back of the snap fastener, and we've got this one that's got a little dish shaped in it that goes over the end there. So I'm going to put those together. Where's he going off to? There we go. Put it either side, make sure it's all nicely positioned. And then again, really good squeeze sets that in place as well. So now I can snap this together and my D-ring is on securely. I'll do that over on the other end, and then my bag strap can be clipped onto my bag and it's all finished. Now, I did mention that there was going to be a little added extra in this tutorial for those of you that are bag making along with it. So I do get asked a lot about the tassels that I have made for my leather version of my handbag. So this is my smaller leather version, and it's got some funky little tassels on the end. So I'm going to run you through now how you can make those to be the perfect finishing touch for your bag. So to make the tassels that I have shown you on the leather bag that I made, what you're going to need is some nice thick thread. It could be the thread that you've used for top stitching. You're going to want some fabric glue. PVA will work, but fabric glue is better. You're going to need a straight edge to cut down. So it could be a quilter's ruler, could be just a normal ruler at home. And you need a rotary cutter, or you could use scissors for this, but I find it's a little bit more accurate if you use a rotary cutter. And you're going to need some of your fabric. Now, what I've already done is I've cut a long, thin strip. It's not even a centimetre wide. It's probably about 6-7 millimetres wide. And I've got a square of the fabric that I want to use, and it's about the right depth. So the depth of your fabric needs to be the length that you want your finished tassel to be. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my straight edge, and I'm going to start cutting thin strips about the same thickness that the individual strip is. So about 5-6 millimetres wide. And you just keep cutting all the way across, move it over a little bit, cut another one. And what I'm doing is I'm not going all the way to the top. So I'm leaving about 2 centimetres at the top of the tassel that's all still joined together. Make sure you separate them down at the bottom, and then just keep on cutting all the way across. Right, so I cut all the way across my tassel square. Now I'm probably going to be able to make 2 tassels out of this square. So as I mentioned earlier, it's the same length that I want the tassel to be. And at the moment, it's about the same width. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find roughly the center, and I'll separate this. So I'm going to now make 2 tassels, one for each end of the little strap I've created. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to place the end of the strap into the top of the tassel. I'm going to get a bit of my fabric glue, and it always takes a little bit of time to run down towards the nozzle, this stuff. Now this stuff is very stringy, and you don't need a massive amount of it. If you put too much on, it'll end up absolutely everywhere. So I'm just going to put a thin line, dabbing it all the way across where I'm going to roll my tassel together. And as you can see, it is very stringy. Once I've got the glue on there, I put the end of the strap into the middle, and then I just start rolling, and that little thin layer of glue is going to catch hold of the top of the tassel at every turn and keep it nicely together. So I've rolled it all the way along. So we've now created a tassel on our little strap. And then what you want to do is get some thread. Doesn't have to be a massive long piece, that's about 30 centimeters long. And I'm going to start wrapping it round and round. And what I want to do is have a little loop at the top of the tassel, if you can see that there. I've made a little loop, and then I'm going to wrap the thread round and round quite a few times. Make sure it's nicely secure and it's catching the loop. Once you've wrapped it round a fair few times, you're going to pass the end of the thread through the loop, pull it tight, give it a little wiggle, just make sure that it's nice and secure. So pull both ends until you can see it's really nice and tightly secured at the top of your tassel. And then when you're happy, give it a little trim, take those long ends out of the way, and you'll have your completed tassel. Repeat that for the other end of the strap. So you've attached a tassel onto both ends of the strap, roll it, wrap it, knot it, and then trim it down. And you've then ended up with a completed tassel ready to attach to your bag. Pass the end of the strap through the D-ring. So fold it in half, end of the strap through the D-ring, pass both your tassels through the hole, and it's ready to use. So there you go, you've done it. A beautiful bag put together. You have the 3 different size options. You've got the options of tassels as well. You can really make this pattern your own. Have fun with it. I'd love to hear about how you get on. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to help you with it. Enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed this bag pattern. I hope you enjoy the bag you've made. And I really hope you come back and join us again soon for other projects. Take care for now. Bye.